Okay, last but not least, I have my reflection on my adolescent reading interview. These were very interesting to do. I was teaching summer school this summer, so 2 of the interviews I did were with students who were participating in summer school. So they are kids with special needs, high functioning, but below grade level. So that was interesting in and of itself because I got to talk to kids who people would typically think wouldn't like to read, and when you ask them about reading, they really seemed to enjoy it. Now, that could be because they didn't know me, and so they felt like they had to say certain things, but the responses they gave me seemed genuine. Excuse me. And the points that they made were legitimate. So the 2 students, they both actually talked about Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, partially because it was assigned for, or it was on a list for a summer reading, and how they really enjoyed that book. One of the girls was really proud of her ability to make images of what she read, and that helped her. She also said that she really likes when her teacher reads aloud to her, which I do not think we do enough of for students, especially kids that struggle with reading. I think it's a great opportunity for them to kind of just decompress and really focus on listening and taking in a story. So that is definitely something I do with my students. My students are not capable of reading because of their disabilities, but so that is their only exposure to text, is when I read aloud to them. And I do, even though they're functioning at an extremely low level, because they are so severely and multiply handicapped, I do choose books and texts that are age appropriate. So I am really going to take some of these books and bring them back to the classroom with me. We discuss them, and we phrase questions in a way in which they are able to answer. And they do let me know in their own ways when they're interested in something and when they're not. So I do take those things into account. But for kids, students like the young people that I interviewed, who are still functional, verbal, thoughtful adults or young adults, the opportunity to be read to is a great one, I think, and it really allows for maybe some deeper conversations, some deeper comprehension, because that stress of reading the words themselves is taken away. So that's something that I feel like I know that I do now, and I will continue to do. However, the 3rd girl that I interviewed, she is what you would consider maybe not gifted, but she's a very strong reader. She reads a lot, and she does not like to be read to because she can read faster than a teacher who is reading aloud. So a possible cure for that could be the fact that she not have a text in front of her to follow along, because she's going to read ahead, so that she's just forced to listen. Or if you're in a classroom with kids of mixed abilities, take a survey and go on the basis of the general consensus of the class. Does the majority of students like to be read aloud to? Does the majority of students not like to be read aloud to? Maybe build in some choice. You know, I'm going to be reading aloud. If you are choosing not to listen, please read independently. But then there would need to be some kind of check to make sure that a student isn't just sitting at their desk holding a book and not doing either. So there is a way to work with kids who prefer not to sit through a read aloud, so that way they're not totally tuned out. But I do think reading aloud to kids in upper grades is important, and it's fun. So that's something that struck to me. It was clear from their responses that some of these things are things they had never thought about before, like good reading experiences. I don't think they've ever thought about, wow, when was the time I really enjoyed myself reading? But they were typically things that happen in early childhood, the first time they read something by themselves, one of the first books they read that they really liked. Excuse me. So that really shows us how important early literacy development is, and how much of an impact it has on young adults, because it was these things that they brought up, not, something that happened last week. So the way in which teachers and parents interact with young students who are learning to read is extremely important, and really affects them going forward. So if students have negative experiences and negative memories associated with reading and literacy activities, then that is going to carry on with them throughout their school career if major improvements and changes aren't made. So the other thing that stood out to me was that none of them read magazines or newspapers. They do read graphic novels. They all felt comfortable reading their textbooks, which I'm not sure whether or not I believe them, honestly. Because I considered myself a strong reader, and I don't like reading textbooks. I feel like my mind wanders and I don't gain a lot of information. It really takes me a long time to read a textbook, because I have to focus so hard on what I'm reading, and really process what I'm taking in. So students who have books around them, the girl who was the strong reader, she said she had over 1,000 books in her house. I mean, obviously that's just a guesstimate, but it was clear that literacy and reading is something that is valued in her house. So the correlation between that and the ability to enjoy reading, the predisposition to pick up a book as opposed to sit in front of the TV or a video game or things like that. So modeling literature use and practice in a home is important too, I believe. Kids need to see people reading. Do your students ever see you sitting with a book and reading for pleasure or for information? It's not just something you have to do. So I think time with young adults, when we're in elementary school, we have dear time, right? Drop everything and read. So why not continue that into the upper grades? Have a time, and I believe we read about this in an article or the text, have a time. There are schools that have times when everybody in the school stops and reads. The custodians, the people in the office, and I think that's amazing, because that shows such a community of readers, and that we all read, we're all doing it. We do it in different forms every day, and it's not going away. So we need to be good at it. And it can bring you great joy and great pleasure, and it's a great way to get information. So I think really making a community of readers is important in classrooms. Making it a place, something that's fun, something that's enjoyable, something where students feel like they have a voice, that they're able to express their interests and really get into a book. And that's important with young adults.